This, I didn't even get on Facebook yet.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Facebook Live with GAE. I am Lisa Morgan, GAE president and a kindergarten teacher in DeKalb County.
I'm Sharon Doe, GAE Vice President, and I teach science in Richland County, Augusta, Georgia.
And I'm Carly, and I'm a science teacher in Fulton County, Georgia.
And I'm Joe Fleming, lobbyist for the association.
And so we don't know if we have a guest this evening. We've invited several of our candidates, and we are going to be talking this evening about the election. And y'all, we already have a question from one of our members that watches us each week. And so I'm just going to go ahead. Let's just flip the script, Joe. She said, can we provide an update on the election for the state legislature? And we were going to kind of go the opposite direction, but we can start with the state legislature because we all know everything we do in our classrooms, everything about our pay, our benefits, happens at the state legislature. So yes, everybody's been watching that. And I will say we are waiting for all the votes to be counted. Just saw a news story before we came on. Here in Georgia, there's 162,000 ballots to be counted. While some of the counties, it may be 5 or 10 ballots that they have left to count, but we do have counties that have significant numbers of ballots left to count, and that could have a big impact on our state legislative races. So some of them are still too close to call. All the ballots aren't counted, but we do know about some cases and we do know some things, what it's looking like. So Joe, where are we for the state legislature?
So I think the most important thing to note is that there was no change in the partisan composition in terms of who controls the House of Representatives and who controls the Senate. It is a possible pickup of 2 for Democrats, I believe, in the state Senate, and maybe 1 in the House. But a couple of key races to note. Unfortunately, our endorsed candidate, Bob Trammell, the minority leader for the House of Representatives, was not able to achieve re-election, which will be a real loss for GAE and others at the state capitol. But national Republicans put over $1 million into that race, which is almost probably unheard of amount of money in a state legislative race in Georgia. The chairman of the Senate Education Committee, PK Martin, who has parts of Gwinnett County, lost his bid for re-election. So we're going to have a new Senate Education Chairman that I assume later this month or early December we may know who that is. Remember also that we already have vacancies with the Senate and House Retirement Committee. So we've got 2 of our key committees, or 3, they're going to have new leadership, and we look forward to working with them and getting together with them soon to explain our concerns and some of the education issues that we face in the coming session. There's a couple other races. Ed Setzler in Ackworth, Georgia, who's been in the General Assembly for 18 years, I believe. He is in a dogfight reelection right now. That's a race that we contributed into for the Democrat. Deborah Silcox in Sandy Springs, a Republican. She's also engaged in a race where we supported the Democrat candidate. Those races may be subject to a recount or possibly will be moved by the additional votes that you mentioned, Lisa, yet to be counted. Michelle Owl has won a race. We endorsed and supported her. So we've got a number of wins under our belt this year. But I think overall, it wasn't the kind of election that either the Democrats or Republicans were expecting in Georgia. I said even, I think last week, that I thought there was a reasonable possibility the Democrats would take control of the House. They did not again. But one map I kind of want to show real quickly, if I can share my screen, hold on. Live election map. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm disabled from doing that, it looks like.
Give me just a moment. I think you should be able to now.
Okay.
Well, while he's getting that set up, one race I was really excited about was between Raphael Warnock and Loeffler. And now it looks like that one's going to a runoff.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that one a lot because I left my Rev Up the Race sign up so we can be there. Okay, Joe, what are we learning on our map?
So, there's been talk for years that Georgia's becoming a purple state, and I think this was another advancement toward that categorization. Cobb County, overwhelmingly Democratic for Joe Biden, 55%, has for years was a county that Newt Gingrich represented in the U.S. Congress. It was one of the most conservative districts in the country. But Biden won that, and we won a host of legislative races in that district. But this whole area of blue right through here are all former Republican counties. And when you couple the metropolitan Atlanta area with Athens, Augusta, down here Columbus, Albany, and Savannah, that's the recipe for Democrat success in Georgia. And to begin to chip away at some of these other counties in the ex-urban area. And I think this election was demonstrable proof that they're moving even closer to that. Another election cycle may truly make Georgia purple as can be. Purple as a bruise.
And what that says to me for our members is we truly have to have red for ed be all about the E, because if we're a purple state, we know we have Republicans in our legislature who still have the majority, but we have a larger Democratic presence, and the E is in the middle of the word red. So we're not going to be about the R or the D. We're going to be all about the E and bringing everybody together to that E in the middle.
And for the record, we did support a number of Republican candidates this year. Trey Kelly's over here in Paulding County. He won easily his reelection. So I agree with you. A bipartisan approach is important, particularly when the state is as competitive as it is. So that's kind of a story of the General Assembly. The control of the chambers remains the same. There'll be a few new seats picked up or lost with additional votes to be counted.
Okay, so I'm going to do my first commercial going with that. And I am putting in the comment section, if you are watching, we sent out a legislative member alert a little bit earlier today with some information about how our members can volunteer to make sure every vote is counted in this election. But also in that newsletter, you will find information about our Lobby and Learn session that is happening next Saturday, November 14th. And while Joe has this map up, the other thing that is in there that we really want, I want our members to email me and let me know and volunteer. We have a legislator in every one of those areas, and we want to have a member who is going to be on our legislative contact team and assigned to all of those legislators. So we have an educator that when something comes up for education, they know who to talk to. They know who can give them the answer. So Joe, thank you for sharing that with us.
Mention just two other races from my notes. So if we go back up here toward Alpharetta, whoops, in North Fulton, again, an area that was just almost 100% Republican a few years ago. John Albers, the incumbent Republican, is in a very tight race with Sarah Beeson. And that's, again, another race. Yeah, she's great. Another race where the final counting of votes could easily turn that race around. And then in Nikema Williams, the election for her state Senate seat, there's going to be a runoff December 1st between Sonia Halpern and Linda Pritchett. So that will be another race I think we'll be taking a look at as well.
Okay, great. So that's our legislative update. And we do really want our members to get involved and get to know your legislator. So they know if something comes up and they're sitting there thinking, okay, this is going to affect teachers, they have a teacher to call. I want you to be their phone a friend when they have a question. So that's where we are. We will be, obviously there are new members of the legislature. I'm excited because in Gwinnett County where I live, we have a couple of new members of the legislature who were here as guests with us on Facebook Live. Our guest from last week, Rebecca Mitchell, it looks like she's going to win her seat. And so, yes, it wasn't great. And
it's a great one to point out because she beat an incumbent Republican also. And she's a really strong candidate for us.
Yes. So we're excited about that. Also, excited that we had so many of our members at our Get Out the Vote rally. And that's something else that we need to be thinking about going forward. Sharon's so excited that Reverend Warnock is going to be in that runoff. But do y'all know when that runoff is? I know, Joe, you do.
I don't.
Carly, Sharon, you know when it is?
No.
Joe, you want to lower the boom? Or are you having to look?
I'm having to look, to be honest with you.
Okay, I'll lower the boom.
Kind of one day at a time here, right now.
The runoff is January 5th.
January
For the U.S. Senate.
5th. So let's think about that timing a little bit. So Friday the 1st is going to be New Year's Day, and we will have a runoff on Georgia the following Tuesday. So Grace is here. So Grace, I have a question for you. You may not know the answer yet, but thinking about that runoff on January 5th, normally we have early voting for like 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time. Well, the week before is going to be the week of New Year's. The week before that's the week of Christmas.
Oh.
Yeah. Are we going to be able to have all that runoff, all that early voting time? Or are we looking at, we're really going to have to make sure we have a plan to vote and we may be standing in line?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. That's a great question
Like 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time.
that my dog wants to answer. One second. If you want to go to commercial, forgive me.
Okay, yeah, we'll do a quick commercial while you're doing that, Grace. So I will go ahead and I have put the link in for the newsletter. And we do have, yay, one of our people that said they've told their sphere of influence, we are voting for Friends of Public Education. That is what we have to do. And so I'm going to put in, if you look in the newsletter, y'all are going to get this, y'all are going to be sick of seeing this from me tonight. The very first article in the newsletter is about volunteering to help voters in Georgia who need to cure their ballot, which means there's some issue with their ballot, their mail-in ballot, and it hadn't been counted yet. And we want every vote to count, because every vote, because every vote counts. So if you have some time in the next 2 days, Thursday and Friday, to volunteer to assist voters who need to ensure that their vote is counted. Okay, Grace. So tell us about this runoff, and are we going to be able to do early voting?
Yeah, so dates are still sort of up in the air simply because the day to certify the election is planned for the 13th, but we do know right now that there are about 163,000 outstanding absentee votes that need to be counted. And so depending on how quickly that can get done, while we know that folks want to promise to be able to get it done today, it's very possible that it could continue to be delayed. Nevertheless, that's a consideration that we have to address. The other thing is, it's the holidays, so people have travel plans. People want to spend time with their family, and we all know that requesting your ballot by mail takes time. And so it's really important that as soon as the results get called and you are able to request an absentee ballot, assuming that's what you want to do, go for it. Please do it. We are guaranteed early vote days for every election. And so as soon as those are available, we'll be able to take advantage of that. But again, given that people are going to be traveling or spending time with their family, it's really important to plan ahead. And GAE will be there to make sure that we can help you do that.
So yeah, that's what I was thinking about, because I know there's on December, the first Tuesday in December. Is that the first?
First.
Okay, so I know on December 1st, we're going to have a runoff for Senate District 39, where we had State Senator Nikema Williams is now Congresswoman Nikema Williams. Yay, more women in Congress. But it's looking like that's definitely going to be a runoff. So they would not start the early voting for the Senate runoff until after that, correct?
I believe so. I believe so.
Okay, yeah.
We do know that the general election runoff for federal offices is planned for January 5th. And for local and state offices, it's December 1st. So I don't think that they would have the federal one before the state one, if that's your question.
And they wouldn't open the early voting.
That's actually a great question too. I don't know. Actually, I don't want to pinpoint, but here's hoping. I think because we've seen them be more open to voting generally, making sure that everybody gets an opportunity to vote. That could be a possibility. I think we'll see.
What was your question, Lisa?
About early voting and how that's going to work with it being in the holidays and it being right first.
I think they're required under state law to offer a period of early voting.
Right. I just wonder how long it will be. And
it's 2 weeks like this, but yeah, I'll check.
November 18th is the earliest day for the registrars to start delivering absentee ballots for those runoffs.
okay.
But as for in-person voting, I believe actually that starts December 14th in person.
Okay. So it won't be as long. And I get to go vote in the runoff for a Gwinnett County race for the Soil and Water Conservation Board.
Question from online. Someone
Yes.
wanted to know, what is our GAE membership total to date? And I didn't know off the top of my head. I don't know if any of us know off the top of our head.
It's
Is it 18,000?
And no, because that's not everybody. That's not everybody. The
Oh,
round number I give is 25,000.
okay, okay.
We just have to do a round number because when we start adding different categories, we have so many different categories of members. We have
Okay.
active members, we have our education support professionals, we have our retired members, we have our students. And so 25,000 is our round number.
Okay.
Okay, great. So, Grace, Sharon already brought up the runoff for Reverend Warnock, and we know we're going to be there supporting. What is it looking like in our other Senate race?
Okay, so the most recent numbers I've seen, I'm gonna pull that up really quickly. It's about a difference of 44,000 votes. Maybe I'm confusing that with present. Okay, so right now the vote total for Purdue is 2,411,000 votes. The vote total for John Ossoff right now is 2,264,694. So the gap, the gap is narrow. Well, it was narrowing earlier. I think it's we'll see, especially with these absentee ballots that counted. There's still a very strong possibility that John could make a runoff, assuming that those ballots in Fulton, those 27,000 ballots that experienced some kind of glitch with the machine not counting them, that's very likely to go in his favor. But we'll see. So far, it's still up in the air, still a toss up.
And I remember, Joe probably remembers this. One of the first elections I participated in when I moved to Georgia after college, there was a runoff for state senate between Wyche Fowler and Paul Coverdale. And I can still sing the little song that was in the ad for Paul Coverdale, this little old lady singing the song.
Her name was Margie Lopp from Cuthbert, Georgia.
Yes, yes. Everybody remembers that lady. Everybody remembers that song. So if we do get in a runoff, we need some, we need some things that people are going to remember to know that they need to vote for John Ossoff and Reverend Warnock. I like Reverend Warnock's rev up the vote. I think people can remember that, but we really need some of those things here in Georgia.
Vote your Ossoff.
That's
Well, we
right.
had vote your
Ossoff.
Yeah, but something, that will engage voters and get them excited and help them remember who our candidates are.
I can't remember the tune. You want to sing it for us, Lisa?
No, I'm not excited. No. Y'all don't want to hear me sing.
Let me show something else. I posted
Okay.
a link to and just kind of show you what it is. You can find the election results on the Secretary of State's website. I found the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's website easier to navigate because it only features contested races, for example. But the link should be in the Facebook chat box. And let's see, Grace was just talking about David, Perdue, and Ossoff. There are the numbers there. You can check it. Your local district, if you know the, let's see, East Cobb or East Point. East Point, Georgia, for example, voted to allow Sunday sale of alcohol. And then you scroll down further, look at your Senate district. You'll need to know the number again, or House district down further. So if you're having a hard time finding results for your for the candidates in your area, it's a good resource to go to, I think. Do you want to talk about presidential, Lisa?
Yeah, and I think we should talk about our experiences with that. I'm kind of interested. I know for me, I was truly excited Monday, and I thought that, that this was going to be an election much different than what it turned out to be.
Mhm.
The anxiety really hit last night. I do have a good story about that because I decided the way to keep myself from like pulling all my hair out was to stay busy.
Mm.
So I was phone banking with Carolyn Bordeaux's campaign, and I spoke with a young lady who did not realize she was registered to vote. And I talked with her and let her know, yes, she was registered, let her know where her polling place was. And then she said, but I've got my daughter. What? I said, it's fine. Take your daughter with you. You can take her in to vote. You should be with you all the time. And so later last night, she sent me a text message and she did go vote. And she sent me a picture of her sticker and her child's future voter sticker. So that kind of lifted my spirits back up. And then as the night drug on, I got back in that anxiety place. So, Sharon, how was last night for you?
Well, last night for me was kind of iffy because I was just really expecting more than what it really was. I thought there would be a landslide one way or the other. And when that didn't happen, it kind of just took the wind out of my sails. Because I really thought that people would vote one way and not the other way, given the evidence of everything that has happened.
Yep. Carly, what was your night like?
I watched the news for a little while. I was switching back and forth between Fox News and CNN. I'm trying to gauge, we're trying to gauge which one was gonna give me some good results or the actual results. I finally fell asleep. I know my husband was up until 3 o'clock. I couldn't do that because I had to work today. I just want a new Secretary of Education so bad. That is what I'm hoping for. But that's one thing that I'm still hopeful. I'm still hopeful. Hasn't been called yet, so I am still hopeful.
Now, I did have a lot of happiness on a local level because we had several local school board races, and one of our millennial candidates did make it out to the school board, so I was happy about that.
Yay! Joe, I know you were up quite late.
Yes, probably till 6 a.m. I couldn't, it's like reading a mystery novel. You just got to get to the end. Yeah, certainly it was not the election that I was expecting, nor were any of the pundits or pollsters. By the way, I just want to show, I think this is accurate and updated. So Biden only needs one more state to win. And the states that, according to the Associated Press, that are still outstanding or they're not calling yet include Nevada, Alaska, Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. If Biden wins one of those states, he's in. Now, Trump has already filed lawsuits in Michigan and in Pennsylvania, and I'm sure there'll be others. So we will probably have a protracted process, hopefully not like the Bush-Gore campaign of years gone by, but I don't know what this means. It means that pollsters are having a hard time getting reliable answers to questions. And I do know there are Republicans who probably felt uncomfortable publicly stating that they were going to vote for President Trump again. But it's not at all the way I expected the map to look. But that's what we have. And unfortunately for the Democrats nationally, they felt like they had a shot at taking control of the U.S. Senate, but that appears to be short. There's still a couple races out there that could move it, and weren't able to really add as many seats in the House as they would have hoped for. But so it looks like you're gonna have a Republican Senate still and a Democratic House, with probably a Democrat as president.
Well, even though the polling data may have been unreliable, I still respect anyone's right to vote for the candidate of their choice. And I think that's really important that we exercise our right regardless of who we vote for.
Okay, Grace, bring us home. Tell us about this.
Oh man, all the pressure. I feel like people have been asking me to predict this race, and I don't know any more than anybody else on this Zoom, or Facebook Live. So I'll say this. I think regardless, the Democratic Party is going to have to do some reckoning within its own party. I think there is something to be said about reaching out to being a populist candidate, and reaching out to voters that typically don't get included in these polls, for example. And I also think that in a state like Georgia, we are seeing demographic shifts that tend toward one side. However, the message is a whole nother dynamic that people need to be aware of. And if you're not getting that message and to the voter, I think you end up having people who sit at home, even if what they're seeing on television is terrifying to them. People still need to be reached, and you need to be able to connect your message with the voter. So we'll see what happens, but I think in some of the predictions, it would look like Florida, Texas, Nevada, and Arizona would all go together. But I think what we're seeing is a divergence in class. There's a cohort of, college educated white voters that Biden went after. But when you look at it, the numbers, at least in Georgia, reflect the opposite, that there are more voters who are not college educated, and who he was able to reach. So we'll see what all these dynamics actually bear out after all the votes are counted. But for the most part, I do think that Biden is going to, eke out Nevada. And even if Trump wins Pennsylvania, it still wasn't going to be enough to make the path to victory given where we are now. So we'll see.
Yeah, and Florida's maybe the biggest surprise of them all. I was really surprised that
I wasn't.
You weren't surprised by Florida? No.
Not at all, because Florida has a large, so when you look at the demographics of certain, of all the different groups, all the different constituencies, I think people want to rush to group every single voter who is quote unquote Hispanic together, or every single voter who is Black together, or every single vote, put them in a box. But none of these groups are monolithic. And particularly in Florida, it almost as if Trump was playing his ads towards Florida, because there's a huge Cuban American contingent there that, obviously coming from Cuba rejects the whole socialism movement. And my understanding is that Biden could have done better about reaching voters, Hispanic voters across the board in Florida. So those things combined, I actually wasn't surprised that Florida went for Trump this year.
That leads to something I want to talk about, because it really is something as educators that we talk about, we focus on, that words matter and truth matters, and that when I have so many conversations with my students about, we're not name calling, we're not going to be putting down other people. And it seems like both sides, I've seen a lot of today, continuing, nobody wants to listen to anybody else. Nobody wants to listen to anybody else's opinion. They just want to throw arrows, sling barbs, and entrench on one side or the other. And so much of it that's getting thrown out either isn't true or is only intended to inflame the conversation, not anybody listen to the conversation.
And you just wonder, where is the voice of reason in all of this? Where is it? Who's gonna come in and say, well, okay, you've had your say, and now let's sit down and have a civil conversation and let's try to find some solutions to the problem. Because when you're doing the name calling and when you're going back and forth, you're not helping the situation and you're not finding a solution that way.
And you're turning people off, right? You're giving them a reason not to listen to you anymore and just keep it moving.
That's the problem I have with some of the ads. I don't want to hear why you think this person is so awful or radical or whatever the word is you want to use. I want to know what you're going to do for me as a voter. And I didn't see a lot of that in some of the ads. I saw mudslinging, and that turns me off from a candidate. I don't like that. That's just my personal opinion when it comes to that.
You know, Carly, I was thinking about that earlier today. I feel like from Reverend Warnock's ads, I feel like I know him. I know who he is. I know where he grew up. You know, he talked about, you know, being at the end of the alphabet in school. I feel like I know him and who he is. I have no idea about Kelly Loeffler. I have no idea who she is, where she's from. I mean, I literally was asked earlier, does she live in Georgia? And I'm like, well, I think so. But, you know, and I think you're really right about that, Carly, that it was all mud and no getting to know who these people are as candidates. So when it's all mud, people reached for the label because that was all they had left to relate to. They related to the label of Republican or Democrat rather than the candidate because all they saw was all the mud.
Right.
So I'm going to do our next commercial real quick. So this month for November, we have Rights at Night, and I'm very excited and want you all to sign up. It's going to be all about our teacher retirement system. And we've been talking about the legislature tonight, and everything about the teacher retirement system comes from the legislature. Every legislature since 2013, 2014, there has been a bill to make changes to teacher retirement. There's probably going to be one again this year.
Unfortunately.
So we need to know our teacher retirement system. So this Saturday, there is a lobby and learn session with our retired, so you can learn all about your retirement system. And then Rights at Night on November 17th, we will have Dr. Buster Evans, who is the executive director of TRS, with us to give us all that information we need about the teacher retirement system. Registration for both of those sessions is in the newsletter that I've put in the comments twice, and I'll throw it in there again because it's got everything in it tonight. We also have in there our lobby and learn session on November 14th. And if you are listening to us now and you care about your job and you want to learn how to be effective lobbying with our legislators, you want to learn how the Georgia budget works, because we know that's going to be a big thing, attend the lobby and learn on November 14th. And that registration link is in the newsletter as well. So that was a long commercial. So Joe, tell us, what can we expect out of the legislature?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, new faces, especially for some of our key committees. We will be beginning soon to make arrangements to introduce ourselves to the new chairman when we know who they are, and the new members as well, so that we can be a resource for them on issues pertaining to education. In my opinion, we've got four main issues that are probably going to be at the forefront of our attention. I think first is probably the budget. I think everybody who's listening knows that we took a $1 billion cut in funding for public education. I don't know what the tax revenue numbers will look like, but we need to stop the cuts and begin to claw back some of the money to public education that we lost this year, because we're not going to stand by for another 10-year period of austerity cuts. Number two, waivers. And Lisa, you may want to address that more fully. But we have a system in Georgia, which apparently is unique across the country, in that we allow school systems to decide what rules and laws they want to follow. And it fails our kids and our teachers and our schools. An easy example is class size, where you have a state law that says you cannot have more than X number of kids in a classroom. And then a local district can come along and say, we want to waive that. So, and that's what's happening now in over 130 school districts in Georgia, which means that for those districts, there are no limits on the number of kids that can be in a class size. And as Lisa and I have talked about before, only the fire marshal could step in and say, you've got too many kids in the classroom. Three, and these maybe are not in necessarily the right order, but private school vouchers, the use of taxpayer dollars to pay for the private education of wealthy parents' kids' schooling. And as always, teacher retirement. Because Lisa's right, it is perpetually under attack, even though it's stronger now than it was before COVID. So those are the main issues in my mind.
Okay. And since you mentioned COVID, I'll go ahead and give us our depressing thought for the night. It's about that time. And maybe we can talk about this afterwards. I thought COVID would have a bigger impact on the election. I really thought that would change how people voted. But obviously not. Last week, we had 32,817 children birthed to age 17 in Georgia with COVID-19. And following our trend that has been consistent now for 2 months, we have a little over 1,000 more this week. It's 34,015. So it's just like consistent week after week after week that there's 1,000 new cases here in Georgia for children. And that's children. And that's what we are educators because we care about children. And it's incomprehensible to me that we have people that see 1,000 children each week getting sick. And that's not a major concern. That's not people rushing out saying, we have to fix this and fix this now. Instead, we have people saying, no, let's cause more and bring more children back into our classroom and let's inflate those numbers. So I'm going to ask everybody again, and I'm going to put it in the chat. We do have the lawsuit that GAE filed about the reopenings, which is statewide, to ask for some consistent guidelines. One thing I'll point out, DeKalb, Clayton, and the city of Atlanta, the city of Decatur, none of them have brought students back to the classrooms yet. They are doing virtual learning because the community spread is what it is in those areas. And I'm looking at the state, and statewide, the numbers are going back up. So we're above that level pretty much every district in the state again. And the other interesting thing to me about this, I don't know if y'all saw this, I posted an article earlier in the week that the judicial system is considering restarting jury trials. And the judges asked for when it's safe to bring the juries in to have a jury trial. And the metric they were given was less than 100 cases per 100,000 population over the last 2 weeks. The exact same metric we were given for when it is safe for children to be back in our school buildings and what has been being ignored. So please go complete the survey about what your system is doing and then sign our pledge so that we have to get some consistent guidelines and some consistency across the state. We're hearing every week about school systems that are closing, schools that are closing because of the cases. And these are, I just can't get over it. These are our kids. So, and I thought, this was my screw up, I guess. I really thought that the fact that we've had 225,000 Americans die from this virus, I thought that was an indictment of the president and the administration, and that people would vote for something different. I don't understand that. Anybody got a clue? Anybody help me there? Sharon, you're muted.
I was just saying people often vote against their own interests for some reason. And we don't know why.
Yeah. I
think there's some COVID fatigue out there, and you know, it may not make sense or be logical, but I think some people just want to think it's not there anymore and run away from it. I'm not sure I quite understand. I've never understood the big deal about masks. It's not that big of a deal throwing a mask. I mean, it's not. You raise a good question, Lisa. I don't know.
I don't. Grace, you said the president's share in Georgia has dropped below 50%. So how long do we think it's going to take? Because we want all the votes counted. Count every vote, because every vote counts. I've said that multiple times, but that's really, as educators, that's who we are. The process isn't over until everything's been counted. That's what's fair. That's what's right. That's our democratic principle. So how much longer are we all gonna be sitting here hitting refresh on these numbers?
I tell you what, there's still one county out, as we know, Fulton, where they haven't gotten through even the day of election day results, okay? If you think about the types of different votes that have come in this year, we still haven't hit provisional ballots. We still haven't hit a lot of these absentee ballots. And then on top of that, especially with these provisional ballots or rejected ballots, people have 3 days to cure them. So if we are going to count every single vote and make sure that those folks who legitimately were able to cast ballots, particularly provisional ballots, then we need to make sure that we're giving them the room to do that. And I think we're seeing that there has been a concerted effort, particularly in the metro counties where there was a lot of disaster and disarray in the primary. They have in many ways cleaned up their acts. I think, there's still room for them to do better, but nevertheless, they're meeting my expectations at this point when it comes to counting these votes. Is it possible to get it done tonight? I just don't think so, especially when you're thinking about those provisional ballots that need to be counted as well, or fixed. So I would say my best guess is, in order to know the exact vote count, we need to be patient and wait at least until Friday. That's my humble opinion. I could be wrong about that. I also know that, at least for the presidential results, Trump did just dip under 50% here. And given some of these, he also did just call for votes to stop being counted, just filed litigation. That's right. Whereas in other states where it looks like it's in his favor, he has asked that they continue counting them. So, you know, we'll see what happens. I think some of this also plays out in courts. But at least for here in Georgia, we won't know until every single vote is counted, at least until after all the provisional ballots are given the opportunity to be cured in 3 days. So again, Friday.
Okay, so Friday would be the earliest, and you said people that have a provisional ballot have 3 days to deal with that. So does that mean they have until
Today marks day one.
today? Okay, so Wednesday's day one, Thursday's day two, so they have until
Friday.
I would assume that's close of business.
Yes, yes,
Normal
that's my
business hours on Friday.
that's my understanding. And then we'll see what the share of provisional ballots actually is to where it changes the margins. I don't know that it will, but it's those absentee ballots that still need to be counted. We also have overseas and military ballots that need to be counted. And so it's just a lot of different layers where if there's the manpower to do it in a shorter time, you know, we'll see if that's the case. But right now, I don't see it playing out until Friday.
I have a question, Grace. What's the process? You said they had to cure their ballot. Where do they go? What do they have to do?
Great question, Carly. Fantastic question. So for anybody who's watching and doesn't know what a provisional ballot is, if you showed up to the polls and they said for whatever reason that your record is incorrect or that there's something missing or yada yada, you by law have a right to cast a provisional ballot, though they won't give you what they would normally give as a regular ballot because of that issue. So if you get a provisional ballot, you should be told by your the person who is the poll worker that the reason why you weren't able to cast a regular ballot, in which case you cast that provisional ballot. For example, a lot of times it's ID, for example, like maybe people show up and don't have their ID. And so all you have to do is come back to the registrar's office and say, here's my ID, so that they'll count that provisional ballot. And you have 3 days to do so from Tuesday. Does that answer your question, Carly? Okay, so there's a whole overarching issue when it comes to these provisional ballots, because most times people just want to cast their vote or didn't hear what the reason was, or maybe don't quite understand it, to where the county registrar keeps a list of all of the people that they have given provisional ballots. But my understanding is they don't actually have contact information on them. So you have a lot of these mobilization efforts who will retrieve those lists of people who have received provisional ballots who need to be contacted, that they can change it. And they'll have to go through some rigorous process of matching up these names to a voter file so that they can contact them to fix that ballot. And now you see where the issue is because it's hard to reach people when all you have is their first and last name. It doesn't actually have contact information. It doesn't take the contact, the provisional ballot list doesn't have like a line for contact information so that people can cure their ballots, which is an issue. And so you have forces, like I said, mobilization efforts. For example, there's Coalition for the People's Agenda, there's Black Voters Matter, there's New Georgia Project. They're all working together and working with volunteers on the ground to retrieve those provisional ballot lists and try to match them up with voters so that they can reach them and get them to cure their ballots within the 3 days.
And Grace, am I correct that if that can be the same process for somebody that sends in an absentee ballot, if there's a problem with their absentee ballot?
Yep, that's correct. I mean, they'll reject it. My understanding is that they'll reject the ballot if for whatever reason it goes through the machine and it's misread or incorrect, as we've heard about State Farm Arena's 27,000 votes, and then they'll have to go through and hand, like count them by hand. And so if there is some reason that they are rejected, it will be marked by the poll worker who's counting them. And then that list gets to be shared with the workers who want to get the vote out and make sure that they have the ability to cure it. I can only imagine it in the cases of the absentee voting, for example, you know, there's strict rules about how you fill out your ballot. So for example, you can only use a black or a blue pen. I don't know what the answer is if they use, for example, a red pen. Are they allowed to count? Are they allowed to fix that or not? Is a good question. So there's there's a ton of issues that could arise from that alone. But
So if you go to that My Voter page and you see that your absentee ballot was not accepted, can you do anything about that? Can you
yes,
get your
yeah. You, first of all, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can call the voter hotline, 1-866-OUR-VOTE. That's OURVOTE. And they can give you the entire rundown, whatever questions that you have. You can also immediately just go to the registrar and bang on the window and say, hey, something happened with my ballot. That's according to the SOS page, my voter page, and I need y'all to let me know how to fix it. And they are required to. So you're absolutely right, Carly, that MVP page is a really, really helpful resource to make you just feel more at ease about what the status of your ballot.
Let's not encourage banging on the window, because what I saw earlier this evening, we have people in another state banging on the window saying to stop counting the ballots. So yeah, there are people out there beating on windows saying stop counting the votes.
Forgive me, Lisa.
Yeah.
Don't count any windows.
and that's just tonight's been my incomprehensible night, but we have a right to vote, and then you have a right to have that vote counted. And I think sometimes I've heard people say, well, my vote doesn't matter, and Sharon and I have both been in elections that were won by one vote, and your one vote does matter. And even if we're talking about millions of votes like we are in the vote for president, your one vote does matter, because that's your voice and it should count. So yeah, go ahead, Carly.
Well, I'm sorry, Carly, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just agreeing with what Lisa.
Okay.
Yeah, every vote should count, and that is your one time to speak up and be heard. So do it.
Yeah.
We talked about legislative priorities this year. It's a certainty the Democrat caucus will introduce an election reform package this year, probably requiring the mailing of absentee ballot applications to all voters, et cetera, et cetera. So that'll be something we're looking out for.
Okay, and so it's our hour is almost up. This has been a very good conversation. I really want us to think about January 5th is tomorrow it will be 2 months away. So we have 60 days. December has 31 days. So 61 days to make sure our voice is heard and that we elect Reverend Raphael Warnock as the next senator from Georgia, because we all know he is a product of public schools and he will support us in our public schools. So I think every person I see, haven't been seeing a lot of people because we've been staying away from crowds. So the texts are going to start again, the phone calls are going to start again, because we have to let everybody in this state know that we need a senator who will support strong public schools, and Raphael Warnock is that person, that candidate. So we'll begin that work probably in the morning. So look for that from us. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Again, in the newsletter, all our members got today, and I put it in the comments. We have Saturday's pre-retirement seminar. We have the Lobby and Learn on the 14th. We have the Rights at Night on the 17th. We have the information if you want to sign up and volunteer to help those voters cure their ballots. And we also want you to do a survey. Everybody have a good evening. For those of us who did not get a lot of sleep last night, get some sleep tonight. And we'll be ready to start again in the morning. Thank you all. And this has been great. Thank you so much.